On this week's edition of Realist History, we're going to talk about Theodore Roosevelt's domestic agenda. Okay, now if you've been keeping up with Realist History, and hopefully you have, I haven't been really highlighting particular presidents like that for real, for real. That's because those motherfuckers were weak. Okay, they were weak. You know what I'm talking about? The people who were really running this country during the Gilded Age on those 1870s, 80s, 90s, with those goddamn monopolists that we talked about, the Rockefellers of the world, the Carnegies, J.P. Morgan, them motherfuckers. Okay, but today we're gonna go ahead and talk about one of these notable presidents, one of these boys who people be talking about for real, for real. One of these motherfuckers who be highly ranked and highly talked about, often talked about, cause a lot of change in this country. Okay, we about to talk about one of those ones. But before we do, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I am your homeboy person. This is the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on something, okay? Here on Realist History, we're doing these segments. Remember to push back against the misinformation. We're doing this to help those who are undereducated, uneducated, and miseducated. Okay, because with the motherfucker we got in the White House right now, clearly something is wrong with America. All right, but let's not waste any time. Let's goddamn go ahead and get to it. All right. All right. So this week we're going to discuss Theodore Roosevelt's ideas on the role of government, analyze how Roosevelt changed the government's role in the economy, explain the impact of Roosevelt's actions on natural resources, and compare and contrast Taft's policies with Roosevelt's. Okay. So we're also going to talk about a little bit about William Howard Taft, who succeeded Roosevelt. And you're going to hear some interesting shit about that because these boys were homies and they fell out. You know, I don't want to give it all away. We're going to get to that. All right, let's go though. All right, let's talk about some of the terms and people that we're going to see here, the key terms of people. All right, again, Theodore Roosevelt, who is described as an energetic progressive who became the youngest president in 1901. Notice, simply became the youngest president. He's not the youngest person to be elected president. That distinction goes to JFK, John F. Kennedy. Okay, I'll talk to y'all more about how Theodore became president momentarily. Okay. Square deal. Roosevelt's program to keep the wealthy and powerful from taking advantage of small business owners and the poor. The Hepburn Act gave the Interstate Commerce Committee power to limit railroad company prices. Okay. The Meat Inspection Act gave federal agents power to inspect and monitor the meatpacking industry. Pure Food and Drug Act gave the federal government responsibility for ensuring food and medicine are safe. John Muir, California naturalist who advocated for the creation of Yosemite National Park. Gifford Pinchot, and I know that looks like Chot, okay, but it's Pinchot, forestry official who proposed managing the forest for later public use. National Reclamation Act gave the federal government power to decide where and how water would be distributed in arid western states. New nationalism, that was Roosevelt's 1912 plan to restore the government's trust busting power. And lastly, the Progressive Party, Roosevelt's party in the 1912 election. Again, we got a lot to cover. This shit gonna hit different. Some interesting shit went on at this time, okay? Because Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican, okay, who's gonna end up leaving the Republican Party, okay? And I know you already said, well, didn't you just describe him as a progressive? Yes, weird, okay? He's a progressive Republican. Weird. We're gonna get into it. Let's go, y'all. All right. So our big question is, what did Roosevelt think government should do for citizens? And this is a question that a lot of people still wrestle with to this day. What should government do? Okay. So, but we're in the progressive era. Well, remember we talked about progressives thought the government should do more. The government should help um, solve the ills of society. Okay. But let's go. It says, after a number of weak and ineffective presidents, Theodore Roosevelt was a charismatic figure who ushered in a new era. Roosevelt passed progressive reforms, expanded the powers of the presidency, and changed how Americans viewed the roles of the president and the government. Okay, so the size of government is going to increase under Teddy Roosevelt, and the power of the president is gonna increase under Teddy Roosevelt. Okay, so this motherfucker, is a significant president. His presidency has lasting effects to this day. All right, let's go. All right. In 1901, 43-year-old Theodore Roosevelt became the United States' youngest president, rising quickly as a progressive idealist. Shortly after graduation from Harvard in 1880, he was elected to the New York State Assembly. Following the death of his wife 3 years later, he headed west to become a rancher. He had a reputation for being smart, opinionated, and extremely energetic. Okay. Now, that part about his wife dying is wild because his wife and his mama died on the same damn day for different reasons. Okay. Now, I don't know why the professors that wrote these slides left that shit out because when I watched that shit, learned about that in a documentary, I like, damn, that's wow. You know what I'm talking about? But luckily for him, he was rich as fuck, came from a very wealthy family. And so, he had the money to where he could just, go peel off for a while and more. You know what I'm talking about? Like like they say right here. He was able to just go to the West, you know, do a lot of outdoor shit. From what I've studied, he was kind of weak in his childhood, to man. So he started trying to build himself up through, weight training and boxing and doing outdoor shit, and became, even though he was filthy, stupid, stinking rich now, kind of made himself into this kind of tough guy. You feel me? So when those tragedies occurred, he moved to the West to chill out. You know what I'm talking about? In 1889, he returned, earning a reputation for fighting corruption on New York City's Board of Police Commissioners. Chosen by President McKinley to be Assistant Secretary of the Navy, he resigned to organize the Rough Riders at the start of the Spanish-American War. He returned a war hero and was elected governor of New York in 1898. Now, I called most of those motherfuckers, those presidents of the 1870s, 80s, and 90s weak. And McKinley was one that he kind of had some juice to him. You feel me? Yeah, you'll see more of what I'm talking about when I get to imperialism and tell y'all about the Spanish American War and all that kind of shit. So he did have a little juice to him, but something gonna happen, the moment. We're gonna talk about that momentarily. Uh and we'll get into the details of the Spanish American War and all that kind of shit. But just know Theodore Roosevelt did go serve in that war, and then this is a time where people really view war differently. You know what I'm saying? Like, I guess some people today still view war as this heroic, noble thing and all that kind of shit instead of recognizing that war is hell. You feel me? But this is before war was really mechanized. Like yeah, they had guns and shit like that. But hell, he was out there riding on a damn horse. You know what I'm talking about? Like you motherfuckers ain't doing that day. You gonna get your ass knocked off. But it just was different, y'all. So he left his post as Assistant Secretary of the Navy to go serve in the Spanish American War. And oh shit, that made him big shit. You know what I'm talking about? And this is just some human shit. Y'all know when somebody wins a fight, and we won that war easily. Okay, again, I'm gonna tell y'all all about that. All right, in the next chapter. But we won that war relatively easily, and y'all know if somebody win a fight, their rank increases. Y'all know that. You know that from the hood. So with us winning that war and him being dubbed a war hero from his exploits in that war of serving with the Rough Riders, oh, that made him more popular. You feel me? And that helped him get elected governor of New York. All right, let's go. As governor, his progressive reforms upset Republican leaders. To get him out of New York, President McKinley agreed to make Roosevelt his running mate in 1900. They won easily. But in 1901, William McKinley was assassinated. As president, Roosevelt dominated Washington. He was so popular that even a toy, the teddy bear, was named for him. All right, so first of all, y'all see that on the slick, the Republicans really didn't like this man. To my Roosevelt now. Okay, so they were trying to find a way. Damn, how the fuck can we get this man out of New York? Because he doing too much. You know what I'm talking about? And their way of trying to get rid of him was, hey, let's make his ass the vice president. Okay, again, a lot of people be thinking, oh, the vice president is the second most powerful person in the country. No, the fuck they are not. No, they are not. I know many people like me, we're proud of Kamala Harris, but the vice presidency ain't like that. You know what I'm talking about? In my lifetime, I think that motherfucker Dick Cheney probably was the most powerful vice president. And that just because goddamn W wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. He was just letting motherfuckers do whatever they want to do. But being vice president, you ain't got no real constitutional power other than goddamn, hey, be on deck in case something happens to this other motherfucker. You know what I'm talking about? So they were thinking, hey, we can get rid of Roosevelt by letting him run with McKinley. And hey, he's a war hero, so that'll help McKinley win as well. They did not fathom that William McKinley, the Republican president from 1897 to 1901, okay, led the country as the country won the Spanish-American War, and the country was starting the American Empire. You know what I'm talking about? They didn't fathom that a motherfucker named Leon Cholgos, okay, and I hope I'm doing that name justice. Leon Cholgos was gonna knock McKinley's ass off. Okay, this man was an anarchist. And anarchists, they don't believe you're supposed to have no goddamn government. Them motherfuckers ain't for the left, right, they ain't for none of this shit. You feel me? And so he knocked McKinley off at one of these World's Fair type of events. You feel me? We're like, well, all this shit is being showcased. All this new technology and all that kind of shit. He knocked the man off there. And so there you have it. In comes Theodore Roosevelt, this motherfucker who they were trying to get rid of, the New York Republicans were trying to get rid of, and now this motherfucker got more power than he ever had. Sometimes plans backfire on your ass. And so you also saw that it said how popular he was, okay? And that the teddy bear is named for him, okay? I guess, some people that named the Theodore, they call him Teddy, talking about as a nickname. So the teddy bear was named after him. And that shit actually comes back to a story from Mississippi, for all my real ones in Mississippi. Now, remember I told y'all that Roosevelt was this outdoorsman and shit. So legend has it that he was down here in Mississippi bear hunting, okay? And long story short, I guess his assistants had brought him like a bear cub, just for him to go ahead and shoot, and that he refused to do that. Okay, and I don't know. This is a different age, y'all. Okay, the stories like that hopefully wouldn't go viral today, but I don't know. In the world of Trump, where everything that son bitch does, MAGA eats it up. But in that day, I guess the public just ate up that story and just political cartoons about it like this went their version of viral, I guess, and guess motherfucking toy maker figured out shit. Hey, let me attach this product to this man's popularity and shit. I can get these bears off. And shit, it worked. It worked. And the rest is history. All right, let's go. Roosevelt greatly expanded the power of the presidency and the role of government beyond that of helping big business. His Square Deal program promised fairness and honesty from government. He used the power of the federal government on behalf of workers and the people. Now, that phrase or that term square deal, that's what his domestic agenda is going to come to be known as. Y'all know various presidents, they have their keywords and shit like that. Of course, like I just mentioned, Trump got MAGA, and Franklin Roosevelt, we ain't made it to yet, he gonna have the New Deal. Lyndon Baines Johnson gonna have the Great Society. So various presidents have their little slogans and shit for their agendas. So Theodore Roosevelt's was the Square Deal. Okay. And now, also, though, I do want to point this out. Just like these other progressives that I told you about previously, okay, and you see, because you see it saying he used the power of the federal government on behalf of workers and the people. He's mainly talking about white people, okay? White people. All right, because Teddy Roosevelt, based on what I've studied, held the same racist ass views of most motherfuckers back then, most white people back then. Okay. In one documentary I watched, I think quoted him as saying something like it'll take 1,000 years for black people to catch up to the intellect of white people, something to that effect. Okay, I'm paraphrasing. That's not a direct quote, but clearly that's racist as fuck. Okay, so I don't want y'all to read that and think, oh, okay, this man going hard for all of us. No, cap. Okay, he's going hard for the average white worker and average white man and woman. All right, let's go. In 1902, Roosevelt threatened a federal takeover of coal mines when owners refused to compromise on hours. This was the first time the federal government had stepped into a labor dispute on the side of workers. The Department of Commerce and Labor was established to prevent capitalists from abusing their power. Okay, so that's a Republican doing shit like that. I know that's hard to think about today with what we got going on right now with the deregulation that's going on in America at this juncture. Like these motherfuckers, they ain't kicked this motherfucker about the party today. Okay, straight up. All right, let's keep going. Roosevelt also took on the railroads after the court stripped the Interstate Commerce Commission's authority to oversee rail rates. All right, so here are two notable laws from back then. The Elkins Act of 1903 allowed the government to fine railroads that gave special rates to favored shippers, a practice that hurt farmers. All right, we've been talking about farmers being fucked up for all the way into this point. This is the fourth chapter. Well, chapter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Well, this is really the fifth chapter that we've done. And in every one of them chapters, the farmers been getting fucked over. So finally, here's something that can kind of help them out. All right. Also, the Hepburn Act of 1906 empowered the ICC to enforce limits on the prices charged by railroad companies for shipping, tolls, ferries, and pipelines. Again, more regulation, y'all. Roosevelt was known as a trust buster. He used the Sherman Antitrust Act to file suits against what he saw as quote unquote bad trusts, those that bullied small businesses or cheated consumers. Okay, so y'all remember we talked about trusts and monopolies, like the aforementioned Rockefeller, Carnegie, Morgan, all these motherfuckers running this country by just consolidating their power and shit, ruining their competition and making all the goddamn money. All right. Well, Roosevelt was one of those cats who went against what he thought was the bad trust. He ain't fuck up all of them, but those that he thought were bad, he was going to use the power of the presidency and the federal government to end those companies and to regulate others. As you can see here in this political cartoon, which I hope you can see. All right. So it mixes two different things about Teddy Roosevelt. It mixes him being this trust buster, this guy who's going after these big ass corporations who are limiting competition, and is mixing his outdoorsman image. Okay, so you see he got one bear labeled bad for us where he murked that motherfucker. Okay, so again, he gonna metaphorically kill the bad trust, the bad big monopolies that are restraining trade and shit. But for those quote unquote good trusts, y'all see he got them on a leash. That's that damn regulation. Okay, so y'all know these motherfuckers probably didn't like his ass for real, for real. All right. Let's go. All right. Roosevelt backed progressive goals to protect consumers by making the federal government responsible for food safety. The Meat Inspection Act provided for federal inspections and monitoring of meat plants. The Pure Food and Drug Act banned the interstate shipments of impure or mislabeled food or medicine. Today, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, tests and monitors the safety of food and medicine. Now, y'all should remember, if you've been really with me now, if you don't remember, you need to go back. All right, go back in the Realist History playlist and watch what we talked about progressives in general, and I taught y'all about muckrakers. You know, these were those writers who were exposing the fucked up shit in society at the time in hopes that things were going to get better. Well, there was a book called The Jungle by Upton Sinclair that exposed, it was trying to expose the working conditions in the meat packing industry, but what people really focused on was how fucking disgusting the meat packing industry was. Okay. And that book, you can trace you can do a cause and effect chart from that damn book to these laws right here. Okay, so again, we see more regulation. Let's go. All right, so Roosevelt had a deep reverence for nature, which shaped his policies. As a progressive, Roosevelt supported Gifford Pinchot's philosophy on the preservation of resources. Pinchot felt that resources should be managed and preserved for public use. Roosevelt also admired John Muir, who helped establish Yosemite National Park and who advised him to set aside millions of acres of forest land. And there's a famous picture right there of Roosevelt at Yosemite with John Muir. Okay, so big time conservationists, all right, preserving the land, national parks. You think about national parks, think about Theodore Roosevelt, all right, because he's responsible for a hell of a lot of them. As you can see here, it says Roosevelt added 100 million acres to the national park and forest system. All right, now again, this is some shit that's still controversial to this day because you got some people who are conservationists, environmentalists, whatever you want to call them, and then you got other people who say, "Man, fuck all that. I want to be able to dig for oil in this area. I want to be able to cut down these goddamn trees in this area." And so, hey, fuck protecting that land. I'm trying to get this money. So you still have these arguments to this day. You got to decide what you believe in. Let's go. And another example of the government's authority, Congress passed the National Reclamation Act of 1902. This act gave the federal government power to distribute water in the arid West, effectively giving government the power to decide where and how water would be dispensed. All right. Now, in 1908, Roosevelt retired, but he soon disagreed with his successor, William Howard Taft, on several issues. Now, pause. What they mean here, the professors that wrote these slides, okay, what they mean by he retired in 1908 is that he chose not to run for president. All right, now you might be saying, chose not to run for president. What the fuck you mean? This whole 4-year term shit was not in the Constitution initially. It wasn't. Okay. There wasn't no federal statute saying the motherfuckers had to stop at 2 terms. George Washington's ass did that, and so he was the first president, and therefore people just followed that shit. You know what I'm talking about? He was a trendsetter. You know, he had set that precedent. And so motherfuckers had just been following that based on tradition. So with Roosevelt coming into the White House so fucking young, some folk did wonder, hey, shit, you might well keep rolling. You know, he's so popular. But he chose to follow the tradition and chose not to run for president in 1908. So that's what they mean by he retired, okay? Because his term is going to end in 1909. So he served as president from 1901 to 1909. So I just wanted to clarify that. All right. But he did put his homie on, okay? William Howard Taft was his homeboy, and he basically gave him his blessing. And since Roosevelt was so goddamn popular, you know, shit, the homie won. You feel me? Just riding, you know, his Roosevelt's coattails. But that partnership is gonna come apart because Roosevelt thought that Cub was gonna come up in that bitch and just basically continue his shit. But and, you know, some stuff he did. But there was some shit that they had disagreements on. And so Roosevelt like, hold on, man, I got you this motherfucking job. Basically, you wouldn't be in it, bitch, if it wasn't for me. And meanwhile, Taft like, man, fuck all that. I'm the man now. I don't give a fuck what you talking about. I can do what I want to do. And so the boy, you know, butted heads on that type of shit. You know what I'm talking about? And here are some examples. All right, 1909, Taft approved the Aldrich Act, which didn't lower tariffs as much as Roosevelt wanted. 1910, Taft signed the Mann-Elkins Act, providing for federal control over telephone and telegraph rates. In 1911, Taft relaxed the hard lines set by the Sherman Antitrust Act. So now you got two cats that, you know, used to be cool that have a falling out over politics. You feel me? We continue. It says Taft did not share Roosevelt's views on trusts, but this was not the only area in which they disagreed. Taft believed that a monopoly was acceptable as long as it didn't unreasonably squeeze out smaller companies. When Taft fired Gifford Pinchot In overturning an earlier antitrust decision, Roosevelt angrily decided to oppose Taft and to run for president again. See, they all shit didn't hit the fan now. You know, I'm talking about the homies, and their relationship is over now. You feel me? Because now Roosevelt gonna say, man, fuck that tradition. I'm going back in this shit. I gave you your spot. I'm finna come take my shit back. Let's go. Roosevelt promised to restore government trust busting in a program he called New Nationalism. Roosevelt's candidacy split the Republican Party, which nominated Taft. Roosevelt then accepted the nomination of the Progressive Party, setting up a three-way race for the presidency in 1912. Okay, so the Republicans were kind of fucking stuck. Like, god damn, bro. Like, Roosevelt, you were the president, but this man is the president. Like, we just gonna toss the current president out. Like, you know, and you kind of bucking tradition anyway, you know, so we gonna goddamn stick with Taft. And so Roosevelt, like, man, well, fuck y'all then. I'm gonna start my own party. Call that bitch the Progressive Party, nicknamed the Bull Moose Party, because that was Roosevelt's nickname, the Bull Moose. And so shit, they gonna get this shit cracking. You know what I'm talking about? But y'all can kind of figure out where this shit going. Both of these boys really Republicans, and so that's really gonna split the Republican vote, which is gonna lead to the election of this motherfucker, Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, president from 1913 to 1921. All right, y'all. So we knocked out another one. All right, let's go back over just some of the key terms and people again, y'all, that we talked about. We talked about Theodore Roosevelt, aka Teddy Roosevelt. You know what I'm saying? President from 1901 to 1909. Progressive Republican. Again, I know how fucking weird that is, but think about his ideology, okay? More so than the party. Him being a progressive, he expanded the power of the presidency. He expanded the role of government. You know what I'm talking about? He increased regulations and shit. He was known as a trust buster. He was a conservationist, all that kind of shit. All right. Square deal was just a nickname for his the domestic agenda. You feel me? And it involved him, you know, involved all the shit that we talked about, you know, regulating shit, or as they would say, trying to make sure that the wealthy and the powerful don't take advantage of the little man, especially the little white man. Okay. The Hepburn Act gave the ICC power to limit railroad company prices. Again, another regulation. Meat Inspection Act, a very notable regulation. Okay, that gave the feds the power to inspect and monitor these meat packing facilities, which I'm glad they do that shit. Okay, and the Trump administration, where they deregulating shit, you better watch. They may be, I don't know, those on the Musk might have got rid of some of these motherfuckers. You know what I'm talking about? The Pure Food and Drug Act gave the federal government responsibility for ensuring food and medicine are safe. John Muir, just think of him. Think about conservationism. Think about Gifford Pinchot. Think about conservationism as well. The National Reclamation Act gave the federal government power to decide where and how water would be distributed. Okay, so again, more regulation. New nationalism, that was Roosevelt's plan. You know, when he ran for president in 1912, his failed 1912 campaign, and the Progressive Party, that was Roosevelt's party, also known as the Bull Moose Party, that he ran with in 1912, again for his failed attempt at another term. All right, so we've knocked out another one. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Okay, and if you missed any of the other stuff that we talked about, again, we've done industrialization, we've done immigration and urbanization, we've done a whole chapter with 3 sections in it on industrialization. Okay, we did a chapter on immigration / urbanization. We did a chapter on the transformation of the South and the West. We did a chapter on the Gilded Age and the corruption and all the bullshit that was going on in the Gilded Age. Okay, and now we're on this chapter and we're talking about the Progressive Era. So if you're just not getting with us, you missed a lot. So you need to go back and check that shit out. Okay, because the way we're going to fight back against the bullshit going on is to be more educated. You feel me? So I appreciate y'all for being here with me on the realest, most entertaining show in the game. Put it on something. You watch the content, you enjoy the content. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And while you're at it, go ahead and become a channel member so you can get exclusive content and a free statement tee shared only with the realest ones.